If you go to bed exhausted without knowing exactly why, the problem isn't lack of time, it's lack of command. And today I'm going to show you the 10 things the Stoics did to turn a chaotic mind into a life under control. Most people think an organized life is about a pretty planner, a productivity app, a checked-off to-do list. But that's just decoration. Real organization starts inside, in your head, in the way you react to what happens to you. And the Stoics, men who lived over 2,000 years ago, without the internet, without notifications, without social media screaming for attention, already understood this. They didn't have fewer problems than you. They had more clarity about what to do with them. Stay until the end, because these 10 practices, in the right order, completely change how your life works. They faced exile, loss, war, illness, and still managed to build a way of thinking that still works today. It's no coincidence that, 2,000 years later, people all over the world still turn to these ideas to get out of chaos. What comes next isn't empty motivation. It's a structure of thinking you can apply today without needing to change your life, your job, or your city. You just need to change the way you deal with what's already in front of you. And that alone changes everything. The explanation everyone gives for a messy life is always the same. I don't have time. But that's a lie, or at least a half-truth. The problem was never the number of tasks. It's the amount of stuff you let into your head without any filter. Other people's opinions, bad news, comparisons on your feed, fear of the future, regret about the past. All of it comes in, and none of it gets sorted. You end up reacting all day instead of choosing, and the modern world is an expert at this. It doesn't need to steal your life by force. It just needs to keep you busy enough that you never stop and realize you're running on autopilot. You wake up, check your phone, already reacting to something. You get to work, already reacting to a problem. You get home, already reacting to being tired. You never decide, you just react. And by the end of the day, the feeling is always the same, exhausted, without knowing where the energy went. You try to remember what you actually did, and you can't point to anything concrete. You just know you were busy the whole time. That's the clearest symptom of a life without direction. A lot of movement, very little progress. It's like rowing hard in a boat that's tied to the dock, burning energy and never leaving the spot. And the worst part is this repeats every single day, forming a pattern that seems impossible to break. The Stoics had a brutal diagnosis for this. If your mind is in chaos, your life will follow the same pattern, always. You can switch apps, buy the most expensive planner in the world, remodel your whole house. If there's no clarity about what matters, chaos comes back. It always comes back. So before talking about routines, habits, discipline, you need to fix one thing first. Who's actually in charge of your head? Because no external tool fixes an internal problem. You can have the best designed system in the world, but if inside you're reacting to everything, that system breaks within the first week. That's why so many people buy a productivity course, try a new method, and go right back to the same chaos in a few days. The foundation is missing, and the foundation is exactly what comes next. The first practice is separating what depends on you. Epictetus started with a simple division. There are things that depend on you and things that don't. Full stop. Disorganization is born exactly when you ignore that line. You spend energy trying to control other people's opinions, outcomes of things that already happened, behavior of people you don't even know. Meanwhile, what actually depends on you, your decisions, your habits, your posture, gets left aside. Anxiety, in the Stoic view, isn't weakness. It's a focus error. The mind spreads itself outward, trying to dominate what it will never be able to dominate, and forgets the one territory where it actually has power. When you understand this and start applying it, something shifts almost instantly. The mind stops chasing the wind. Energy concentrates. You start acting with firmness where you have power and accepting calmly where you don't. Think about how much time you've already lost trying to guess what someone thinks of you, or trying to predict an outcome that doesn't even depend fully on you. That time never comes back, and worse, it brings no return at all. Meanwhile, simple things, like your discipline today, your word, your attitude, get forgotten because they seem less urgent. But those are exactly the things that build the rest of your life. When you flip that focus, the relief is almost immediate because you stop fighting windmills and start building something real. The second practice is reducing excess. After you stop spending energy on what you don't control, the next step is to look at everything piled up. Full mind, full calendar, full house, full relationships. It looks like an active life, but it's almost always just scattering. Everything that enters your life charges a price: attention, time, energy. When you accept everything without a filter, you pay too much for it. Cutting excess takes courage because it requires saying no. But that's exactly what opens up space for what actually matters. Imagine trying to walk a long distance carrying too much baggage. Each item feels small on its own, but together they slow you down, wear you out, and make you want to quit. Life works the same way. Fewer empty commitments, fewer distractions, more room to breathe. Look around right now. How many things are you keeping in your life just because you said yes once and never reconsidered? How many group chats? How many subscriptions? How many commitments that no longer make sense but stay only out of habit? Each of these weights seems harmless alone, but together they form an anchor that keeps you from moving fast. The Stoics saw this as a quiet form of discipline. It's not about having less for the sake of status. It's about having less, so there's room for what actually matters. The third practice is building a routine instead of waiting for motivation. Motivation is unstable. It shows up when it wants and disappears exactly when you need it most. Building a life on motivation is like building a house on sand. Discipline, contrary to what you've been sold, isn't punishment. It's freedom. When you know what to do and when to do it, the mind rests. Doubt fades. The Stoics didn't chase perfect days. They chased predictable ones, because predictability creates consistency, and consistency creates character. A simple Stoic routine starts in the morning. The way you begin your day sets the tone for everything that follows, and it ends with an evening review, not to blame yourself, but to adjust what didn't work. Think about how many times you waited to feel motivated to do something important, and that day never came. The hard truth is, motivation follows action, not the other way around. You start, even without wanting to, and somewhere along the way the energy shows up. Routine is what guarantees you keep acting even on the days motivation simply doesn't come, and those are exactly the days that decide who you really are. The fourth practice is protecting your attention. We live surrounded by stimulation. Notifications, opinions, comparisons, tragedies, someone else's edited life, everything screaming at the same time. Attention is a sacred resource. Whoever doesn't protect their own attention loses command of their own life. It's not just outside noise that creates disorder, it's the excess of voices inside your head, ideas that aren't yours, patterns you absorbed without noticing. Marcus Aurelius already warned to spare yourself from the superficial to preserve the essential. Quieting external noise isn't about escaping the world. It's about consciously choosing what enters your mind. A few minutes of silence a day, no headphones, no screen, no stimulation at all, works like mental cleaning. At first it feels uncomfortable because the noise is a distraction from your actual life. Later, it sets you free. Notice what happens when you sit for a few minutes with zero stimulation. At first, your mind feels restless, almost desperate for some distraction. That's a sign it's unused to its own silence. But if you stick with it, something settles, and your thinking becomes clearer, more direct, less scattered. The more you train this, the less you need outside stimulation to feel okay, and the more room is left to think about what actually deserves your attention. The fifth practice is governing your emotions. The Stoics never advocated for suppressing emotion. They advocated for governing emotion. There's a huge difference between feeling something and being dragged by it. Most people live in automatic reaction. Something happens, the emotion explodes, the action comes without any filter. Regret shows up afterward. The Stoic path goes the other way. Emotion isn't order, it's signal, it's raw information. Anger, fear, frustration, they all show up without asking permission. The mistake isn't feeling them. The mistake is obeying them instantly. Naming what you feel already changes the game. I feel angry is different from I am anger. Between stimulus and response, there's a gap, and freedom lives in that gap. Breathing before responding, waiting before deciding. This doesn't weaken you. It strengthens you. Think about the last time you reacted on impulse and regretted it minutes later. That didn't come from weakness. It came from rushing. The emotion arrived and you acted before thinking. If in that moment you had waited just a few seconds, the response would probably have been different. That small gap between feeling and acting is where the whole difference lies between a reactive person and a person who governs their own life. The sixth practice is defining real priorities. When everything seems important, in practice, nothing is. When everything seems urgent, you live putting out fires, running in every direction and winning no battle at all. Stoicism keeps asking, what actually depends on me right now? What actually matters in the long run? Marcus Aurelius wrote that life is too short to be wasted on irrelevant things. Every bad yes is a silent no to what actually matters. Setting priorities takes courage to disappoint people, to postpone things, to cut things off. It's easier to say you're busy than to admit you're unfocused. Choose one or two things that, done consistently, make everything else manageable. Everything else is noise. Think about how many times you said yes to something that didn't matter just to avoid the discomfort of saying no. Each of those times stole a piece of energy that could have gone toward what actually counts. Prioritizing isn't choosing what's easy. It's choosing what's important, even if it stings a little at first. And over time, that choice becomes habit, and habit becomes identity. The seventh practice is organizing your relationships. You don't choose who crosses your path, but you choose who stays. A person can strengthen you or drain you. Treating access as an obligation, always answering, always being available, tolerating small disrespect just to avoid conflict. That's not kindness, that's neglecting yourself. The Stoic doesn't break off on impulse, nor stay out of fear. He watches for patterns, who only shows up to complain, who devalues your decisions, who turns your peace into constant tension. Organizing relationships isn't about isolating yourself, it's about dosing. Sometimes it's a clear conversation. Sometimes it's just reducing frequency. No drama, no announcement. Think about how many conversations leave you more drained than energized. How many contacts you keep just out of habit with no real benefit for either side. That's also excess, just disguised as social connection. Taking care of who stays around you is just as important as taking care of your schedule or your mind. Because every person close to you directly influences your inner state every single day. The eighth practice is accepting what can't be changed. A large part of life's disorder comes from constantly fighting what's already happening. You try to control a person who won't change, a past that won't return, a decision that's already been made. This creates internal noise, mental exhaustion, a permanent feeling of friction with life. Accepting isn't crossing your arms. It's stopping the internal bleeding. Resistance says, this shouldn't be this way. Active acceptance says, this is how it is. What do I do now? The first one paralyzes. The second one organizes. When you stop negotiating with illusions and stop waiting for the ideal scenario, life becomes simpler. Not easier, clearer. Think about how much time you've already spent wishing something had gone differently, mentally fighting a past that no longer changes. That kind of resistance doesn't change what happened. It just keeps you from moving forward with clarity. Accepting doesn't mean liking what happened. It means stopping the waste of energy in a war that's already been decided. And it's only after that acceptance that room opens up to actually act in the present. The ninth practice is taking full responsibility. Nothing disorganizes life more than outsourcing blame. When everything is the government's fault, your family's fault, your childhood's fault, bad luck's fault, the mind loses its axis. Because if the cause is always outside, command is outside too. You might not choose what happens, but you choose how you respond. And that choice is yours. Blaming brings short-term relief, but it disorganizes your entire life. Taking responsibility does the opposite. It hurts at first, but it gives you back control. It's not about hating yourself. It's about stopping lying to yourself, saying calmly, maybe this wasn't fair, but now it's mine. Pain stops being the enemy and becomes a signal for adjustment. Think about how many times blaming someone else gave you a moment's relief, but solved absolutely nothing the next day. That relief is fake, because while you blame someone or something, you stay stuck, waiting for the solution to come from outside. Taking responsibility is uncomfortable exactly because it demands action, but it's the only path that actually changes anything. Whoever takes ownership of the problem also takes ownership of the power to solve it. The 10th practice is organizing your identity. Deep down, all disorganization is about identity. It's not a lack of a planner. It's a lack of clarity about who you're trying to be. When identity is confused, decisions come into conflict. Today, you want discipline. Tomorrow, you want comfort. This creates exhaustion and a constant feeling of being behind on yourself. Identity sustains behavior, not the other way around. You don't act right in order to eventually become someone solid. You act right because you already decided who you are. Ask yourself with brutal honesty, what kind of person am I when no one is watching? Which values are non-negotiable for me? Clear values work like a compass. Think about how many decisions you made this month based on impulse and how many based on who you actually want to be. When there's no clear identity, every choice becomes an internal negotiation, and that's more exhausting than any physical task. But once you know who you are, the decision becomes automatic, because it only needs to be consistent with what you already decided. Once, calmly, far away from the pressure of the moment. And here's the part that changes everything. When you put these 10 practices together, they don't work in isolation. They lock into each other like gears. You separate what depends on you, and your mind stops wasting energy on a losing battle. You cut the excess, and the essential shows up. You build a routine, and chaos loses space. You protect your attention, and clarity returns. You govern your emotions, and the day stops controlling you. You set real priorities, and guilt fades. You organize your relationships, and your peace becomes a filter. You accept what can't change, and suffering drops. You take full responsibility, and life starts responding. And when, in the end, you organize your identity, everything else finally finds its foundation. This isn't pretty theory to post on social media. It's daily posture. The Stoic doesn't wait for motivation to act. He organizes himself even while tired. He doesn't wait for ideal conditions. He creates order in the middle of imperfection. And that's exactly why these practices, written over 2,000 years ago, still work better than any productivity app released this year. An organized life isn't an easy life. It's an intentional one. It's waking up knowing what deserves your energy, and ending the day at peace with your own choices. The mess was never out there in the world. It was always in the way you reacted to it. When you stop reacting and start deciding, life shifts its axis. Not because everything becomes perfect, but because someone finally took command, and that someone is you. Stay tuned, because the next videos on this channel are going to take you even further on this journey.